The training grounds were alive with noise. Alien cadets ran in every direction, shouting instructions, waving their arms, and trying to control the chaos. In the center of it all was the predator cub, small but dangerous-looking, with sharp claws and bright orange eyes. It jumped and ran, knocking over equipment and sending holographic projectors crashing to the floor. Its tail whipped back and forth like a whip, and its sharp teeth flashed whenever someone got too close. The instructors tried everything. One alien threw a soft training net, hoping to slow the cub. Another made loud noises and waved their arms. Nothing worked. The cub darted between legs, hopped over benches, and pounced on any moving object. The ground trembled under its small but strong paws. Every cadet who tried to approach it ended up tumbling backward, stunned and frustrated. Cadets from different species shouted at each other, blaming someone else for the chaos. "It won't listen," one yelled. "We can't calm it," said another. The instructors were worried. The cub was fast, clever, and clearly too curious to follow anyone's commands. It seemed impossible to control. In the middle of all this, a human child cadet named Kira stood quietly near the edge of the grounds. She was small, with short brown hair and wide eyes, and she held nothing in her hands. The other cadets noticed her standing there and whispered, "She's going to get hurt. Humans are too weak for this. Why is she even here?" Kira watched the cub closely. She noticed the way it moved, the way it paused for a moment whenever it saw a new object, the way it sniffed the air before deciding where to jump next. She did not shout. She did not run. She did not try to grab it. She only studied it quietly, understanding that this little creature was not angry, it was curious, restless, and looking for something to occupy its mind. The cub ran past her and knocked over a tall training pole. Kira stepped forward, careful not to scare it. She picked up a cardboard box that had been left on the side of the grounds. It was small, simple, and empty. She did not make a sudden move. She held it in both hands and knelt slightly, putting it near the cub without forcing it. The other cadets stared in shock. "What is she doing?" one whispered. "She's going to get eaten." Another shook their head. "Only a human would try something like that. It won't work." The cub paused. Its bright eyes focused on the box. It sniffed the air and pawed at the ground near it. Then it jumped back, unsure. Kira stayed calm. She did not push the box or try to trap it. She simply let it explore. She whispered softly, "It's okay. You can look." Slowly the cub crept closer. It sniffed the box again, tapped it with its paw, and then sat back on its haunches. Kira smiled faintly. She could feel that the cub was curious but cautious. It wanted to play, not fight. The other cadets could not believe what they were seeing. All their shouting, all their attempts to control the cub had failed. But the small human with a cardboard box was holding its attention without even trying to control it. The cub tapped the box with both front paws. It circled it once, sniffed it again, and then, to everyone's surprise, climbed inside. The cardboard box crinkled under its weight, and the cub looked up at Kira with bright, alert eyes. Kira gently tapped the side of the box. "Good," she said softly. "You found something to do." The arena fell quiet. The other cadets and instructors watched in disbelief. The predator cub, which had terrified everyone and caused chaos across the grounds, was now calm. It was playing, exploring, and responding to a human without fear. Kira stayed still, letting it choose what to do next. The cub pounced lightly inside the box, then rolled over and batted at the edges. Kira smiled. "See? You like it." She kept her voice soft and steady, never rushing or forcing anything. Slowly the rest of the cadets began to understand. This was not about strength, shouting, or fear. This was about observation, patience, and understanding. The instructors whispered among themselves. "She's small, but she's doing what none of us could." She didn't fight. She didn't chase it. She just waited. And it worked. The cub rolled out of the box for a moment, then crawled back inside, exploring and pawing at the sides. Kira stayed calm, letting it take the lead. Slowly, the chaos of the training grounds began to settle. The other cadets, seeing her success, stepped back and watched quietly. The predator cub, wild and clever, had finally found something to focus on, and it was all because a human had brought a simple cardboard box. By the time the session ended, the cub was still happily exploring the box, and Kira had earned the attention and respect of everyone in the arena. The cadets whispered among themselves. Humans were not the strongest, they said, but perhaps they were the cleverest. They thought differently, saw differently, and sometimes that was stronger than any claw, wing, or weapon. The predator cub had been calmed without force, without shouting, without fear. It had been calmed by patience, curiosity, and one small human with a cardboard box. And in that moment, everyone watching realized that humans were not to be underestimated. Kira smiled as she watched the cub roll and paw inside the box. The chaotic training grounds were quiet now, except for the sound of the cub's happy noises. The human had turned chaos into calm and in doing so had shown a new kind of strength. The predator cub had calmed slightly inside the cardboard box, but the arena was still tense. Other cadets whispered nervously, unsure what would happen next. Some aliens had never seen a human interact with a wild creature like this, and many thought it was impossible. They had all tried shouting, chasing, and even tempting the cub with food. Nothing worked. Only Kira, quiet and calm, had made a difference. Kira knelt beside the box and watched the cub carefully. She noticed every small movement, how its ears twitched when it heard a noise, how its tail flicked whenever it was curious or cautious, and how it pawed the edges of the box before climbing back inside. She did not make sudden moves. She did not speak loudly. She only observed. The cub looked at her with bright eyes. It sniffed the air and Kira could see it was still cautious. She stayed perfectly still, letting the cub take the lead. She understood that this was not about force or control. It was about understanding the cub's behavior and reacting in a way that felt safe and friendly. Slowly, Kira reached for another cardboard box nearby. She picked it up gently and placed it a few feet away from the cub. She did not force it or push it. She simply let it be there, open and empty. The cub tilted its head and sniffed the new box. Its curiosity was growing. Kira smiled softly. "See? You can explore," she whispered. She stayed calm, letting the cub come to the box in its own time. The other cadets watched, astonished. They had tried everything, but it had never occurred to them to simply observe and wait. The cub took a small step toward the new box. It sniffed, circled, and then jumped back. It was cautious, but it was curious. Kira did not move. She waited, letting the cub decide what to do. She knew that pushing it would make it nervous again. Patience was the key. She noticed that the cub responded to movement more than sound. Loud noises scared it, but slow, gentle movements drew its attention. Kira slowly tapped the edge of the box with her fingers. The cub froze for a moment, then sniffed again and stepped closer. She did it again, softly, and the cub's tail began to flick with excitement. Other cadets whispered to each other. She's not forcing it. It's actually listening to her. How is a human doing this?" Even the instructors paused, realizing that Kira's approach was different from anything they had ever taught. Kira picked up a small stick lying nearby. She tapped it lightly against the box, making a soft noise. The cub's ears twitched. It circled the box, then batted at the stick with one paw. Slowly it became more relaxed, more playful. It was learning that this human was not a threat, that she was not trying to control it, and that she understood its curiosity. The other cadets tried to imitate her, but it did not work. The cub only responded to Kira. She had noticed its patterns, understood what made it nervous and what made it curious. The key was observation, patience, and ingenuity. No shouting, no chasing, no threats, just careful study and quiet guidance. Kira set the first box aside and used the stick to gently guide the cub toward the second box. She moved slowly, letting the cub decide its path. It jumped inside, sniffed around, and pawed at the edges. Kira did not interfere. She only watched, offering encouragement through her calm presence. The crowd of cadets and instructors leaned forward. They could not believe what they were seeing. A human, small and unarmed, was controlling the situation without using force. She was not dominating the cub. She was guiding it through observation and understanding. Kira realized that the cub liked to explore and interact with objects. She picked up a few more safe items, small cylinders, soft pads, and empty boxes, and placed them carefully around the arena. The cub moved between them, sniffing, climbing, and playing. Each time, Kira stayed still, letting the cub make its own decisions. Slowly, the chaos that had filled the arena began to fade. The cub was no longer running wildly or knocking over equipment. It had found interest and engagement in the objects Kira provided. Other cadets began to whisper excitedly. "It's actually calm. She's teaching it to focus. We never thought of this." Kira smiled softly. She knew that observation and ingenuity were stronger than strength and shouting. The cub had calmed because she noticed the little things, the cues in its behavior, and offered a way for it to use its energy positively. It was a lesson in patience and understanding, and it worked better than anything else had. The instructors nodded slowly. They realized that humans had a unique way of thinking, different from other species. They were not always the strongest or the fastest, but they were clever, patient, and able to read creatures in ways others could not. Kira had shown them all a new approach and it was working perfectly. By the end of the session, the predator cub was exploring the items around it, playful but calm. Kira knelt quietly, letting it move freely. The other cadets watched in awe. No one had ever expected that a human child could achieve this. They whispered among themselves, realizing that humans had a talent for observation and ingenuity that could change the way challenges were faced. The cub finally settled in a small pile of boxes, sniffing and pawing gently. Kira reached out slowly and patted its head. The cub did not resist. It was calm, curious, and playful. The arena had gone from chaos to quiet fascination. Kira had not used force. She had not shouted. She had not chased. She had observed, understood, and used simple tools to guide the predator cub. And in doing so, she had shown everyone watching that humans were clever, resourceful, and capable of a strength that did not rely on power, only on intelligence, patience, and ingenuity. The predator cub sniffed the new objects Kira had placed around the arena. Its orange eyes flicked from one item to another. A small soft cylinder rolled slightly when it touched it, and the cub batted it back with a paw. It climbed inside one of the boxes, then quickly jumped out, curious but cautious. Kira stayed kneeling on the ground, hands open, calm and quiet. She did not push it or force it. She only let it make its own decisions. Other cadets whispered among themselves. "She's letting it choose," one said. "How can that work?" Another shook their head. "No human has ever calmed a predator cub before. They always fail." Kira watched the cub carefully. She noticed it was drawn to movement but also liked safe places where it could explore. She gently tapped one of the boxes with her fingers. The cub froze for a moment, then crept closer. It circled the box and pawed at the edge. Then, slowly, it climbed in again and curled slightly, looking at Kira with bright, alert eyes. The crowd gasped quietly. The cub, wild and clever, was making its choice to interact. It could have run, pounced, or ignored her entirely, but it didn't. It trusted her enough to explore on its own. Kira smiled faintly. "Good job," she said softly. "You can choose." The cub stepped out of the box and pawed at a soft pad nearby. It sniffed the pad, then pushed it with its nose. It rolled onto its back playfully, then jumped up again. Kira stayed still, allowing the cub to decide its own actions. Every time it approached her, she kept her hands open and her movements slow. The cub learned quickly that she was not a threat, and that her presence was calm and safe. Other cadets began to notice the difference. When they tried to grab the cub or chase it, it ran or hissed. But with Kira, the cub moved at its own pace, exploring and playing. They realized that humans were not strong like other species, but they had patience, observation, and a special way of understanding creatures that others did not. Kira picked up a small stick and rolled it gently across the ground. The cub's ears twitched and it pounced on it, batting it around with playful energy. Then it climbed back into one of the boxes and peered out. Kira smiled again and whispered, "Yes, that's it. You choose. You decide." The cub looked at her and let out a small playful growl, not threatening, just curious. The instructors nodded quietly. They had seen the cub knock over cadets before, ignore all commands and run wild. But now it was calm, curious and playful. Kira had done something no one else had managed. She let the cub make its own choice. She did not force obedience. She did not demand attention. She offered objects and calm guidance, and the cub responded on its own. The cub's confidence grew with each choice it made. It climbed out of one box, pawed at a cylinder, then jumped back in another box. Each time, Kira remained calm, letting it explore freely. The other cadets began to whisper in amazement. "It listens to her. It trusts her. She's not controlling it, she's letting it think." Kira noticed something important. The cub liked having control over its own decisions. When she tried to guide it, she did so gently, always giving it room to act. She realized that the predator cub was not wild in the sense of being dangerous. It was intelligent, curious, and wanted to interact on its own terms. Slowly, the cub returned to the cardboard box that Kira had first offered. It climbed inside, pawing gently at the edges. Then, unexpectedly, it looked directly at Kira. Its tail flicked slowly and it nudged the box toward her, almost as if inviting her to interact. Kira reached out her hand slowly and touched its head lightly. The cub did not move away. It let her pat it gently, then turned back to explore the box on its own again. The arena fell quiet. The other cadets and instructors realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. A predator cub, known to be uncontrollable and wild, had chosen to interact calmly with a human. It had made its own decisions, played on its own terms, and yet, it allowed Kira to be near. No one else could have achieved this. Kira understood the lesson clearly. The cub was not her enemy. It was not a challenge to conquer. It was a being with its own choices and instincts. By letting it make those choices, she had earned its trust and attention. That was a different kind of victory, one that relied on patience, observation, and respect rather than force. The cub finally settled in one of the boxes, curling up slightly but still alert. Kira stayed close, quiet and still. The other cadets watched in awe. They whispered, "Humans are clever, not strong but clever. They see things others do not." The predator cub had made its choice, and it chose to trust Kira. The small human child had shown that patience and understanding could tame chaos, not through fear or aggression, but through observation, ingenuity, and respect. The arena had gone from wild chaos to quiet amazement, all because the cub had the freedom to decide. And in that moment, everyone realized that the human had done something remarkable. She had let the predator cub make its choice, and that choice changed everything. The arena was quiet now. The predator cub had curled up inside one of the boxes, still alert but calm. Kira sat nearby, her hands resting on her knees, calm and steady. The other cadets and instructors could not believe what had just happened. A human child had turned chaos into calm, not by strength or weapons, but by patience, observation, and understanding. Word of Kira's success spread quickly through the academy. Holofeeds and messages carried the story across training grounds, dormitories, and command centers. Scholars, instructors, and cadets from other species replayed the footage again and again, amazed at what they had seen. Humans had been underestimated for generations. They were not the strongest, the fastest, or the fiercest. Yet, in one simple act, a small human child had accomplished what no one else could. Across the galaxy, reports reached the leaders of other species. In training facilities on distant planets, alien cadets crowded around holoscreens to watch Kira interact with the predator cub. Their eyes widened as they saw the cub calm down, explore the boxes, and even respond positively to the child's presence. Many whispered to each other in disbelief. "No one else could do this," one said. "Only a human could." Instructors from other species began discussing what they had learned. "Humans are small and unarmed," one said. "But they think differently. They observe. They wait. They understand." Another nodded. "They see patterns that others miss. They use creativity, patience, and respect. It is unusual but effective." Even the cadets who had tried to control the cub before were impressed. They had shouted, chased, and used every method they were taught. Every attempt failed. But Kira had succeeded by doing almost nothing but watching, waiting, and offering the cub choices. It was a new kind of strategy, one that no one had expected. The predator cub, now calm and playful, had become a symbol. Not of fear or danger, but of the unique power humans possessed. Other cadets began to understand that strength was not always in claws, wings, or firepower. Sometimes, it was in cleverness, patience, and the ability to see the world in a different way. Even senior commanders were amazed. They had trained countless cadets, seen dozens of species fail and succeed, and observed every type of strategy imaginable. Yet Kira's method was something new. She had shown that humans were capable of thinking creatively, solving problems without force, and earning the trust of even the wildest creatures. Cadets from other species approached Kira cautiously. Some tried to learn from her example. They observed how she stayed calm, how she offered the cub objects rather than orders, and how she let it make its own decisions. Slowly they began to imitate her, though none could match her patience. The cub responded only to her, showing that the connection she had made was unique. Instructors decided to update their lessons. Observation, patience, and creativity became new points of training for all cadets. They began emphasizing that strength alone was not enough. Understanding, empathy, and ingenuity were equally important. The war beast, or in this case the predator cub, was no longer only a test of raw power. It was now a teacher of new skills, and humans had shown the galaxy how to learn from it. Across the academy, younger cadets watched Kira with admiration. They realized that even small, quiet humans could accomplish extraordinary things. They whispered among themselves, "If a human can calm a predator cub without fear, what else might they do?" "They must see the world differently," said another. "Maybe humans are something special." The predator cub crawled out of the box again, this time nudging Kira's hand gently. She smiled and patted its head. The gesture was simple, but it carried meaning. It showed respect, calmness, and trust. In that moment, all the cadets watching realized that this small human had earned the predator cub's recognition in a way that no one else had. Commanders and instructors began discussing how humans could be used differently in training and missions. They realized that humans' patience and ingenuity could be more valuable than brute strength. Even alien cadets who had once looked down on humans began to treat them with new respect. The story of Kira and the predator cub spread beyond the academy. Holofeeds on distant planets showed the footage to children, scholars, and leaders. Everyone was fascinated by how a small human had tamed chaos with observation and ingenuity. The tale became a lesson for all species. Sometimes cleverness, patience, and respect could achieve what force never could. In the arena, Kira sat quietly as the cub explored the scattered objects around her. She did not rush it. She did not direct it. She let it choose just as she had done from the start. The other cadets and instructors watched in awe, understanding that humans had a way of thinking unlike any other species. And in that moment, across species and across the galaxy, humans earned a new kind of recognition. They were not the strongest, but they were clever, patient, and capable of achieving things that no one else could imagine. The predator cub had made its choice, and by responding to it with calm and understanding, Kira had shown that humans were more than underestimated, they were extraordinary. The arena fell silent except for the cub's soft noises as it pawed and explored. Every being present knew that something had changed. Humans had earned respect not through fear or power, but through their unique way of seeing the world. Recognition had crossed species lines and the galaxy had taken notice. The arena was quiet now, but the energy in the air was different. The predator cub had settled among the scattered boxes, exploring and pawing at objects gently. Kira sat nearby, calm and still, letting it make its own choices. The other cadets and instructors watched in silence, still amazed at what had happened. A human child had done what no one else could. She had calmed the wild cub, not with force, not with shouting, but with patience, observation, and understanding. After the session ended, instructors called a meeting. Cadets from every species crowded in, whispering about what they had seen. The predator cub had become a symbol, not of fear, but of a new way to approach challenges. For centuries, the academy had focused on strength, aggression, and skill in combat. Now it was clear that other qualities mattered: patience, observation, and ingenuity. The head instructor addressed the room. "Today we have learned something important," she said. "Strength is not always in muscle or weapons. Sometimes it is in understanding, careful observation, and the courage to act differently. Humans have shown us that." The cadets nodded, some wide-eyed, some smiling. They had watched Kira and the cub and they knew it was true. Kira stood quietly, listening. She had not sought recognition, but the respect she received was clear. Cadets from other species approached her, asking questions. "How did you stay calm?" one asked. "How did you know what to do?" another whispered. Kira smiled softly. "I just watched," she said. "I noticed what the cub liked and what made it nervous. I gave it choices and I let it decide. That was all." The instructors decided to change the academy's approach. Future cadets would not only be tested for strength or speed. They would also learn observation, patience, and respect for living creatures. The predator cub, once feared and uncontrollable, would become part of this new type of training. It would teach cadets that understanding and creativity could solve problems that brute force could not. Word of Kira's success spread beyond the academy. Holofeeds broadcasted the story to other planets, other species, and other training facilities. Children watched in awe as the footage played. Scholars and leaders discussed what humans could do. Everyone realized that humans were clever, resourceful, and able to see solutions that others could not. Other cadets began to train differently. They practiced patience and careful observation, learning to notice details they had never considered before. The predator cub became a living lesson in the value of ingenuity and understanding. Every cadet who approached it learned more than just survival. They learned the importance of thinking, watching, and respecting the choices of others. Even senior commanders began to speak differently about humans. They had long considered humans small and weak, but now they saw a new strength: the power to think creatively, to stay calm under pressure, and to understand situations in ways no other species could. Kira's actions had changed the way humans were viewed, and that respect would last for generations. Kira spent time with the cub regularly. She learned its habits, its favorite spots, and the ways it liked to explore. Slowly, the other cadets began to approach her example. They placed objects, offered choices, and allowed the cub to decide what to do. The chaos that had once filled the training grounds was replaced by curiosity and calm engagement. One day, a young alien cadet approached Kira. "I never thought of training like this," she said. "I always used force, but now I see, it works better if you observe and let the creature choose." Kira smiled. "It's about trust," she said. "If they trust you, they respond." If you force them, they resist. Simple as that. The instructors agreed. They designed new lessons, mixing traditional training with exercises in observation, patience, and problem-solving. Cadets were encouraged to study behavior, notice patterns, and guide rather than control. The predator cub remained a central part of these lessons, a teacher in its own right. The academy had learned something fundamental. Strength alone was not enough. Bravery alone could not solve every problem. Intelligence, patience, and understanding were equally powerful. And humans, small and underestimated, had shown everyone the way. Kira looked around the arena one last time. The cub played gently with a soft cylinder, exploring at its own pace. She knew she had changed something important. The other cadets had learned that humans could solve problems differently, that courage and cleverness could achieve what force could not, and that even the wildest creatures could be understood and guided with respect. The academy had a new lesson now. It was no longer only about strength or skill. It was about observation, patience, ingenuity, and respect for life. Humans had introduced this lesson quietly, simply, and effectively. The predator cub had taught cadets to see the world differently, and Kira had shown them how to listen, watch, and act with intelligence. From that day on, the academy's halls were filled with curiosity rather than fear, questions rather than commands, and observation rather than force. Humans were no longer underestimated. They had proven that their greatest strength lay not in weapons or power, but in their mind, their heart, and their ability to see the world in a way no one else could. The predator cub curled up in the boxes, calm and happy. Kira knelt beside it, quietly smiling. Together they had taught the galaxy a new kind of lesson, one that would be remembered for generations. The academy had changed forever, and humans had earned their place as clever, patient, and extraordinary problem solvers.